Okay, well, I think we'll get started. My name's Jason Smith. I'm President and CEO of the Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to our May Power Lunch, which was originally in April, but we're able to get that rescheduled. And we are excited today to have our Lieutenant Governor with us. But before we get started, I am going to introduce our MC today, Mike Madsen. Mike is the chairman of the Business Advocacy Committee for the Manhattan Chamber, and he is going to lead us through today's program. So, Mike.
Jason, thank you. And Governor Toland, thank you for joining us. We're grateful that you take the time, and we're glad we were able to reschedule this. We've got some local elected officials that are indicated they would be joining us. So let me introduce them now. Riley County Commissioner Catherine Fockey, and Manhattan City Commissioners Usha Reddy and Aaron Estabrook. If you guys are online, please shoot us away. We're thrilled that you joined us. I will note that this is, I noticed the other day, this is Public Service Recognition Week. So for the folks I just introduced and for Governor Toland, we're grateful for your service, and we're glad that you were able to join us during this week. Would like to thank our program sponsors, Amicus Partners, Ascension Via Christi, Twin Valley Connected Office, the Trust Company, and today's featured sponsor is Olson. And now I'd like to introduce Mark Batcham with Olson to share with us a little bit about his company. And as it happens, Mark also is this year's chair of the Manhattan Area Chamber. Mark, take it away.
Thanks, Mike. And I'd like to welcome Lieutenant Governor Toland and Trent to the Power Lunch today. And it's good to see you again, Trent. At Olson, everything we engineer has a purpose. We are a nationally recognized, employee-owned engineering and design firm with a rich history of success in the state of Kansas. Olson does work throughout the United States, and we have dedicated offices in Manhattan, Olathe, Overland Park, and Pittsburgh to serve our Kansas-based clients. I'd like to talk about a few Kansas projects just to highlight and show up versatility of our firm. Under construction right now are two roundabouts on Henry Drive at Fort Riley, and that will assist the Fort with better access. Mine reclamation project with KDHE, and of course, a lot of you know of the Aggieville redevelopment with the parking garage currently under construction. We have a project out in Dodge City that's reconstructing Trail Street that's in front of National Beef. This area gets over 600 trucks per day of cattle coming into the facility. What a much needed project for safety. Our firm was founded in 1956 on the very mindset that drives us today. We're here to improve communities by making them sustainable, better connected, and more efficient. Simply put, we work to leave the world better than we found it. So I'm going to take my Olson hat off, and I'm going to change hats as a board chair of the chamber. And I want to mention to you, Lieutenant Governor Toland, that the Manhattan Chamber is focusing on increasing our industrial site locations and looking into building a spec building. It is our goal to better position the Manhattan region for economic growth. Because of your leadership, we thank you for bringing the Department of Commerce back to the business recruitment mindset that we enjoyed several years ago. Thank you, and enjoyed sponsor this event.
Mark, thanks very much. Before we introduce our first speaker, I would like to remind our participants today to keep their microphones on mute. If you have a question, please feel free to type it into the chat box, and we will get to it. It's now my pleasure to introduce our speaker. David Toland is the 52nd Lieutenant Governor of Kansas and also serves as the Secretary of the Kansas Department of Commerce. Toland was appointed Secretary of Commerce by Governor Laura Kelly in January of 2019 and was appointed Lieutenant Governor in January of this year. As Secretary of Commerce, Toland has overseen sweeping changes within the agency. Under his leadership, the department has rebuilt its in-state, domestic, and international business recruitment teams, launched the state's Office of Broadband Development, reestablished the Community Development Division and the Kansas Main Street Program, and launched the state's first new economic development strategic planning process since 1986. These efforts and more have resulted in more than $2.5 billion in new capital investment by businesses in Kansas in 2020, an increase of nearly 80% of the previous year and the highest in state history. Before joining the team at Commerce, Toland was the first CEO of Tri-Valley County, a nonprofit coalition focused on improving economic conditions, healthcare access, and quality of life in the small rural Southeast Kansas community and county. Prior to Thrive, Toland worked as an appointee of Washington, D.C. Mayor Anthony Williams, holding key leadership positions in the D.C. Economic Development and Planning offices. He holds both bachelor's and master's degrees from the University of Kansas. It's my pleasure now to turn the floor over to Lieutenant Governor David Toland.
Mike, thank you so much. And I really appreciate that introduction, in part because you used your broadcaster voice so well. So thank you very much. And you heard that my degrees are from KU, but I don't know if you can tell, this is a purple tie that I wore expressly for the occasion today. And I'm really glad to be here. Before we go into the formal program, I wanted to just mention in response to Mark's point about focus on industrial development and doing a spec building, how pleased I am to hear that. And that coming on the heels of our efforts to first make sure that all Kansas communities are using the lowest system, which is the Location One Information System, when they're responding to RFPs. And Commerce has now made that system available to all Kansas communities. It used to require a membership in KDA, but now we're picking up the cost so all communities can participate in it. And we hope that will be helpful. But the other point I wanted to make is about certified sites. So the Kansas Certified Sites program is in partnership with KDA and the Department of Commerce. And as you are developing these sites and getting and doing spec building development, would encourage you to get those sites certified and get that stamp of approval, so that as companies and site selectors are looking around, they know that there aren't going to be any surprises. Nothing's going to jump out and derail a project at the last minute because of an environmental issue, or you don't have clear title, or whatever the issue might be. So use certified sites, and if you have questions about that, reach out to me directly, and we'll get you in contact with Jonathan Clayton, who leads that for us. So it's great to be back. I was asking Abby Works here, who's my special assistant and a proud Wildcat, about the level of development that has happened in Manhattan since I came back in 2008 from DC to Kansas is extraordinary. And I was asking about Aggieville and all of those improvements, and you take that, you take everything around the Flint Hills Discovery Center, you take the residential development that's been happening, the investments that have been made on campus, and what you have is a city, a community that is very much on the move. And I have enjoyed so much going to Manhattan and dining and staying and being able to appreciate all of the investments that you have made through the chamber and local economic development efforts. Appreciate the commissioners who are on the line today as well. You're pushing forward, and it does not go unnoticed. So thank you for your efforts, and I'm excited for what the future holds. So speaking of the future, let's transition, if we could, to the slide deck, please. You can go to the next slide. So I'm going to take you through, to go to the second slide, I'm going to take you through a little bit of data on where we are as a state, the process that we used to develop the framework for growth, which, as Mike mentioned, is our first new economic development strategic plan since 1986. I won't tell you how old I was in 1986. But we went too long without having a plan. We got that fixed now. And so it's time to implement that. And then Trent is going to take you through the mechanics of the framework and kind of do the deep dive on how this is going to work in partnership with you. So next slide, please. So what you can see here is that as a state, we've got some pretty significant, what we call headwinds. Before you do a plan, you have to first understand where you are. You have to look at the data and analyze the data and figure out how that can help us chart a more prosperous future. What we've seen in the state is we've had GDP growth, but it's sluggish. We lag behind our peers. We lag behind the nation as a whole in GDP growth. We have a long-standing problem with outmigration. It's, you can go back 100 years and that has been an issue. But what is of most concern is that the rate of outmigration of our young talent, so that whether we're talking about the kids that are coming out of K-State or whether we're talking about kids when they leave high school or our technical colleges, they are leaving the state of Kansas and they're going to other places in most, and the biggest driver of this is better economic opportunities in those places. So that's a challenge for us. We also have a huge decline and an accelerating decline in our working age population. And in some regions of the state, not so much in the Flint Hills region, though it's true there as well, but particularly in Southwest Kansas, South Central and Southeast Kansas, you have a large percentage of jobs which are at high risk of disappearing due to automation. And I'm not talking about 30 years from now, we're talking in the next decade. And so we've got those factors that got our attention and that have very much driven how we've developed this plan. We want to fix these problems. Now, we also, of course, have tailwinds. We've got assets to work from. So if you look at our fundamentals, our ag economy, our manufacturing sector, you look at the quality of the workforce that we have, we have something to work with. We also have an incredible educational system that is cranking out the talent that we need in the private sector. We just have to keep them here. And so the question of alignment is really important. The question of how do we establish internships and apprenticeships is really important. But we've got stuff to work with, and that should give us hope. So let's go to the next slide. The framework really is intended to be the North Star, not just for the Department of Commerce, but for all of our partners across the state. So we're talking about private sector partners. We're talking about chambers and EDOs. We're also talking about local governments who are key to economic development and key to growth. And what we've tried to make sure we do, and next slide, is have a plan that has been done right from a process perspective. So if we had just cooked this up in Topeka and written what we think ought to happen, the likelihood that this plan would sit on the shelf and collect dust is close to 100%. We didn't do that. What we did was we went out on the road and we asked a lot of questions and we presented a lot of data, and then we listened. And that has been key to developing something that we hope communities feel like they've got their fingerprints on and that they recognize and that they can relate to. And so, as you can see, we had over 2,000 people across the state, individuals that we engaged in this process. We started pre-COVID. I'm so thankful that we didn't have it done when COVID hit because, as we all know, the world changed dramatically. And so we continued our outreach and engagement through virtual platforms. And the end of the day, what we have here is really the platform we need to launch into the future. And so we've benchmarked ourselves against our peer states. We've benchmarked ourselves against best practices in economic development nationally. And we've set goals around where we want to take this state and how we get there together through a collaborative, partnership-driven approach to economic development. Next slide. So this is where I'm going to hand the baton to somebody who you know and love in Manhattan, and that's Trent Armbrust, who has been very much the driver of the Framework for Growth and so many other initiatives here at the Department of Commerce as we're working to not just rebuild, but rethink how we do economic development. So Trent, take it away.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. And it is so good to be back with all of you and excited that we can share this plan with you. And we look forward to hearing your comments and questions at the end. Overview of the Framework for Growth. This is the one slide that kind of shows it all. And we're going to go through each of these elements in detail as I work through the presentation. But really, we're going to focus on the pillars because that's really what this is built upon. And we'll go through examples of each of those and then explain what we mean by economic regions towards the end. As we all know, talent's where we start. Talent's the key. Every company we engage with, the question is talent, talent, talent. And so we understand that. And as Lieutenant Governor pointed out, it's really important that we reposition ourselves so that we have those career opportunities for the talent to stay in the state, so that economic opportunity exists here. And so part of our effort in talent is to help reposition the training and to understand where those gaps are and where the demands are for high skilled jobs and high wage jobs. And then we want to also make sure that we're aligning ourselves with emerging technology and emerging skills in the future. So this is an area of emphasis. And just to point out and highlight what the Lieutenant Governor is talking about regards to automation. If you look on this slide on the left-hand side, in 2020, 67% of the work was still done by humans in business. In 2025, which we're quickly coming upon, we're approaching that 50-50 mark. And so you can see that acceleration of automation in the economy. And then on the right-hand side of the slide, you can see what those top 10 skills are for 2025. It is a shift for us, and it's an opportunity though for Manhattan, and we're really excited about what this can bring for the state of Kansas and the opportunities. An example of automation that relates to agriculture is we have a sister province in China called in Henan, and during a recent meeting with them, they presented this slide to us to show us their new pork producing facilities. And if you look at this, there are no humans in this pork producing facility. If you look at the very bottom, you can see that there's the AI protocols that are in place. It's fully autonomous system with robots and sensors. And this is the type of automation. This is the type of technology. This is the type of innovation that we need to be thinking about in the United States as well. The next pillar is innovation. Kansas, this is one area that really we have fallen off, I say, a cliff around innovation and entrepreneurship. Kansas, we have a lot of great ideas. We have a lot of very smart people, and we're really good at taking those ideas, developing them, and then we commercialize them somewhere else. We send them outside the state and others profit off of that. So we want to rebuild the innovation ecosystem in Kansas. That requires support for our entrepreneurs, but that also means starting more businesses in Kansas, commercializing that IP. And so this is one of our early focuses, and we've already started some of these efforts around rebuilding that ecosystem through our partners, and we will have some new initiatives that come out this summer in innovation. Key to this are our state universities. Kansas State University is a key player in this. And we want to make sure that we have access to the talent that's at Kansas State University, both the students and the research, but then also that we're helping bring whatever knowledge is at the university out and commercialize that. Next are the next pillar of community assets. And this is really, really important for us to think about in terms of economic development. What are those key assets in each community that are economic drivers? We see the picture here in the airport, and that's so important for that connectivity and the business driving that does. But also we need to think about incubators and accelerators and offices and all those elements that help drive economic development. But at the very bottom, you can also see promote vitality, livability, and quality of place. And when you think about the Edge District on the North Campus, and you think about what's happening in Aggieville and Manhattan right now, these are key investments that are going to help retain talent, but then also help attract companies. And so really critical that we work together hand in hand as a state and communities to have these really important community assets. And the last one I want to touch on here is broadband. We really understand the importance of broadband. That was highlighted during the pandemic. And the Office of Broadband Development's in the Department of Commerce. This is a huge priority for us. And we know with the federal funds that are coming our way that we're going to see continued investment in broadband. Policy, we talked about 1986 was when Redwood Crider did the last state economic development plan. We also haven't been updating our policies as we move forward. The world has changed as far as economic development tools, the importance of remote workers, and therefore, what does that borderless economy look like for a state? But then also we need to continue to update our incentives to make sure that we're competitive. And I'm going to highlight some of the changes that just took place in this last legislative session. Target sectors, we're going to focus on advanced manufacturing, aerospace, distribution, logistics, transportation, food and agriculture, and then professional technical services. So what does all that mean? So advanced manufacturing, we're in the fourth industrial revolution. Matter of fact, we're 10 years into it. And that's really bringing those tools of artificial intelligence and robotics in that connected shop floor into the manufacturing space and doing it at a really high level that increases productivity, that increases quality, that increases supply chain accountability. All of those elements are part of advanced manufacturing. Aerospace, we're seeing opportunities here that are beyond Wichita. In matter of fact, Manhattan has a great company that's involved in the aerospace industry. But the opportunities in aerospace are expanding. And it's not just new airplane manufacturing, it's missile systems, it's UAS. And then really, as we start to see the technology integrate, we're also getting into really the whole autonomous vehicle environment is tangential to this. Plus we have maintenance, repair, and overhaul opportunities in aerospace. Distribution, logistics, and transportation, Kansas is well positioned. We've seen a tremendous growth in this area that leverages our location, but we're also building the infrastructure that supports the development of this target sector. And now the next step is that integration of technology into the distribution logistics systems. Food and agriculture, you saw the example from Hanan. There's a lot of opportunity in food and agriculture, and Kansas needs to do a better job of capturing that profit off of our agricultural base. And so we've seen some great success in the past year with food processors. We're going to continue to see some success with some new announcements coming up soon. And so we're really excited about the opportunities in agriculture to capture more in Kansas, and also the whole ag tech biosecurity aspect, really important. And then the professional technical services, you see the headquarters there, that back office support, but this is also design, this is fintech. There's a lot of different elements here that Kansas has strengths in that we want to continue to capitalize on. So what have we started doing? How do we make this plan real? As Secretary or Lieutenant Governor said, I still call him Secretary. Lieutenant Governor said, we don't want this to sit on the shelf and collect dust. So we started working on this last fall and started prioritizing some of our efforts in the Department of Commerce around the framework for growth. One launch is in cooperation with the Kansas Board of Regents was the micro internships. We use the Parker Dewey platform, and think of this as gig economy internships. Companies can sign up, students sign up, and the companies provide short, very defined internship opportunities for a student. And so it may be 6 weeks long. The company actually pays Parker Dewey, and therefore the student's not an employee of the company. So it makes it very easy and frictionless for the company to find students that can help inject ideas and handle very specific projects. This is a low-cost way of participating in internships. And we're very focused on internships and apprenticeships in our talent efforts right now. The Advantage Kansas Executive Order, this is creating a new committee that's looking on how to better align our education system with industry. And so we've just started that effort in the last month. And then we had some very specific Spark grants around talent, and that included cyber and IT training. And then also we focused on advanced manufacturing in our higher education institutions. Innovation, again, we had specific grants related to that in our Spark. We're also focusing on the new Small Business Credit Initiative opportunity that was part of the American Rescue Plan. And that we just filed for that for the state, and we look forward to developing those programs over the next year. And then we want to do things around how do we support our entrepreneurs. Community assets, you see the 55 million that we invested in Spark grants towards broadband. And then we've also expanded Main Street. Junction City in this region is one that is a new Main Street community. And then we're doing a statewide housing study right now. Policy, I touched on that. And the next slide, it's going to show exactly the success. And I give David Sofer, who is in the Department of Commerce, all the credit for navigating the legislative waters and getting this amazing amount of work done in this last legislative session. And these have all been signed into law now. Star bonds extended for 5 more years. This is a tool Manhattan has used successfully in the past. This has been expanded to include major business facilities. There's some additional requirements around tracking and feasibility, but we're excited to have this tool back in our toolbox. HPIP, major program for incentives with businesses, decoupled it. And we separated the KIT and KIR, Kansas Industrial Training, Kansas Industrial Retraining Programs, which are our talent training programs, from HPIP. This is going to allow us to better utilize the KIT and KIR dollars for training and not use those dollars just to qualify companies to use the HPIP incentive. So we're very excited about that. And we're going to allow companies a one-time transfer of up to 50% of their tax credits. So they can now monetize those tax credits if they don't have profit to offset. A really big win for all of Kansas is the renewal of the Angel Investor Tax Credit. And this extends it through 2026. And it also moves it from $6 million a year to $8 million incrementally. Really excited about this. This puts Kansas in the leadership position when it comes to supporting startups through angel investing. Rural Housing Incentive District allows for that vertical residential renovation of older buildings. Important to Manhattan and Kansas State University is the renewal of the extension of the University Engineering Initiative Act for another 10 years. It's $3.5 million a year to each of the schools. And then also, we're in the process right now of moving the Division of Tourism to the Department of Commerce. This is going to help us tell our story better. Really excited bringing the two staffs together so that we can really tell that story internally and externally and have the professionals that are so good at that all in one department. And then lastly, that affects Manhattan in such a positive way will be the license reciprocity and in getting those individuals quickly into our workforce and not have the issues of transferring that in. And so I know it's something that's been a priority for the Manhattan community for a while. Implementation plan. So how are we going to move this forward? How are we going to continue to move the framework forward? One is we're going to have what we call the Kansas Competitiveness Projects. I'm going to give you an example of one in just a second, which is our first one. Second, we're going to name a chief strategy officer. This is someone who thinks about this all the time on how we're going to implement the framework and what are the appropriate strategies and steps we need to take to continue to advance the Kansas economy. And then lastly, regional excellence initiatives. And this is not Commerce saying, okay, here's this geographic region. It's communities coming together around a resource or a cluster or an idea and saying, hey, we regionally can do this work together. We can do this better together with this common vision and these resources. And so we're going to, as we develop this idea and start to put funds behind this, we look forward to working on a regional basis across the state for economic development purposes. One of the areas as we move into our Kansas competitiveness projects, and it's not specifically called in the framework, but one area we're working on in Kansas is coding, computer science. If you look at this map, Kansas is a different color than most other states other than Connecticut, because we're one of the last 2 states that does not count computer science as a core high school graduation credit. This is part of that evolution of moving our workforce up and getting us to where we need to be so that we're competitive on a talent basis. And so we're working with a group of associations and our Board of Education on this effort. Our first Kansas competitiveness project effort is cybersecurity, and we want to create Kansas as a center of excellence. We have the assets that need, and we're going to continue to develop those. Kansas State University is one of these NSA centers of academic excellence, and so are several other schools. So we have this academic base that we can start to build off of. We have military assets and government assets, Fort Riley and MBAF being two of those, that we have the facilities and we have the talent coming out of those institutions. We've got the workforce, cyber companies. Again, we've had several cyber companies in the last few months announced. We're going to have some more in the very near term. So we're excited about the growth of not just the government element in cybersecurity, but also the private sector. Current situation, you all know the cybersecurity situation, but what you may not know, the average wage for cybersecurity professional in the state of Kansas is $104,000 a year. Tremendous economic opportunity. And this speaks to what Lieutenant Governor was talking about, those quality career jobs with economic opportunity in Kansas. But we're not producing enough workforce. And so this is where we're focused right now. We have 2,500 open cybersecurity jobs in the state of Kansas. Cybersecurity touches every industry and every business. This is not just you need to be a cybersecurity company or a cyber or a government installation. It's every company needs cybersecurity professionals. And that's why we picked this one, because it's truly cross-cutting and it's an essential skill that we need in the state of Kansas. So our strategies, we're going to focus, the first two are workforce and talent supply chain. How do we quickly get people into the cyber world using certifications and credentials and badges, also those degrees, and how do we get this into our K through 12 education system? Then we also need to work on our research supply chain, start building up that research base at our institutions, commercializing that, developing that secure infrastructure. There's a lot of opportunity with secure cyber work. We don't have the infrastructure to capture that, nor do we have the infrastructure to necessarily train cybersecurity professionals at a really high level. Focused on that area as well. Enterprise development of developing those companies, and then that network of support that all industries need to be successful. So our vision, I threw a lot out there. How are we moving through this? The first 5 years, we're in this phase right now. And I just want to communicate a sense of urgency here. We really need to move quickly in Kansas, and we need to be aligned in our efforts. But in the first 5 years, we're stabilizing. And I feel like we're doing that. And we're starting to reposition our economy for those emerging jobs, those jobs that have a long lifespan as we move out of traditional legacy sectors where we know jobs are disappearing. And then we need to start punching above our weight class. Kansas used to punch above our weight class, meaning we used to produce at a level that exceeded what people would think of for our population base. We're going to get back there. We're going to punch above our weight class again. And as we move through this, we're going to future-proof our economy. We're going to continue to be innovative. We're going to continue to be focused on emerging technologies and trends and prepare our workforce and prepare our communities for those opportunities. So with that, we say thank you, and Lieutenant Governor and I'd be happy to answer questions from everyone who's online here.
Trent, thank you. Lieutenant Governor Toland, thanks so much. That is a very impressive document, and it's clear that a lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into the making of it. So thanks again. If you have a question, I'll remind our participants to please enter it in the chat box, and we will communicate it that way for efficiency. Let me start off, Lieutenant Governor Toland, by asking you, when you look at that plan, right, and all of the time and talent and treasure that went into making it, you clearly have a well thought out implementation plan, but what keeps you up at night?
The thing that keeps me up at night is outmigration. And it's also the fact that we've got a lack of bodies in the state. So not only are we losing our talented young people, but we don't have enough people to work the jobs that we've got. And so I'm most concerned about that. I think to the extent that we can start to bend the curve on out migration, that allows us to supercharge our economy. It really does. You've got 44,000 vacant jobs in Kansas today, 44,000 unfilled positions. And that is everybody from engineers and, high wage, white collar professions down to, people at the other end of the wage spectrum. And it is really concerning to me that we have had this century-long trend of outmigration that is getting worse. So that's what I lay awake at night and worry about. And it's also where we're really focused right now, because as Trent pointed out, there's a variety of reasons that people leave. One is just better economic opportunities elsewhere. And so that's why it's so imperative that we make sure that we are creating the jobs of the future, which are actually the jobs of today in the state, but also that we are that we're creating that alignment to those jobs when the students are still in school. And so we get them into internships, we get them into apprenticeships so that it's harder to leave after you graduate because you've already got something lined up. And so I just worry about the people factor more than anything.
Fair enough. Here's a question from Kristen Brighton. Kristen, I should have recognized her earlier. Kristen is an elected member of the USD 383 school board here in Manhattan. And she asks, are you pleased with the passage of the Kansas Promise Scholarship Act? And do you think it has potential to help us get more young people stay in Kansas?
I am pleased with it. I think it's one of many programs that we're going to need in order to get our young people to stay in the state. But I think it will help. And I might just take Stephen's question as well while we're on this about the legislature and say that as I think Trent illustrated nicely, we got a lot done this year from an economic development perspective. We had broad bipartisan support for all the bills that were listed, as well as the tourism move over to Department of Commerce from Wildlife and Parks. And so I'm really heartened that we have bicameral, bipartisan support for growth right now. Are there some disagreements on other policy issues? Certainly there are. But as far as the Department of Commerce was concerned, this has been a very successful legislative session, and we got more done this session than we have in the previous 10 years combined. So I think that tells you that there's an opportunity right now to implement this and to do big things going forward. We've got good momentum, and we've made the case, and people have listened, and they're on board with addressing these issues of outmigration, addressing these issues of automation and what it's going to mean for employment in the state, and so many other things.
And just to follow up on that, as you all know, in the public policy realm, right, good arguments will take care of themselves, right? If you can present the data, and if you can make an argument, then that you are more likely to be able to get people to agree with you. Is that your sense of where these issues are with respect to the way legislators think about them?
For the most part, yes. We have had a 2.5-year rebuilding process at the Department of Commerce. That's about rebuilding our internal capacity. That's about modernizing our tools. That's about getting just bodies back into seats to do work. Our international team, once upon a time, we had a physical presence in 7 countries, and we had 14 staff in Topeka, all working on trade and attracting new foreign direct investment. When I took over, we have a half-time person in Mexico, and we had 2 people left in Topeka. So we've had to rebuild, and we've done that. But perhaps the most important rebuilding that we've done is rebuilding of relationships. And so whether we're talking about at the local level with partners at Chambers, with Jason, we've got good got good communication with the Manhattan Chamber, and we are engaged and we're rowing in the same direction. I'm not sure that that was the case when we started. And so we've worked on those relationships with our local partners, but we've also, I've been very intentional about building relationships with the legislature, making the case and doing it in a way that I hope conveys urgency and that we're here to be transparent about how we operate. I think Commerce had for a long time been difficult for legislators to understand how we do things and why we do it that way. And so I've tried to demystify the department, tried to communicate better, and I think we've seen some of the fruits of those labors. And I say it's really this team as a whole that has done the work.
Here's a comment, some testimony that goes to some of the points you have already made and will allow you to elaborate on that. One of our participants says we're losing a lot of talent because salaries in Kansas are not very good. As an engineer, I hear that all the time. Cost of living is lower, but not on par with the depressed salaries here. I don't know how that is with other professions. A lot of us are constantly entertaining going to other states for better pay. Reaction to that?
Trent, you want to take that one?
Yeah, and we do hear this in other professions. And so I think this one hits the nail on the head of, talent has it's not just our graduates, it's all of our talent is seeing greater economic opportunity outside of Kansas. And it is a lot of professions. And so, I totally agree with the comment here. And, this is one area that we're working with our employers on, is helping them understand that wage difference and that opportunity difference for the staff and the talent. And so this is going to be one of those that we have to work on as a whole state, but it's also going to be industry by industry and company by company.
Are there, Trent or Lieutenant Governor, are there short-term fixes for that, or is that a long-term, long-haul challenge?
It's a longer challenge for us. It's a mindset change for some of our businesses.
Okay, fair enough. Here's a comment from Jack Alston, who is EcoDevo Pro here in Pot County. So Jack says, I was put on the Talent Ready work group of the AKCC by Alan Cobb, who is the CEO of the Kansas Chamber, and Ma, with Dennis Watson. Can you explain how these groups will impact the framework for growth?
Trent is our representative on the Advantage Kansas Coordinating Council. So Trent, why don't you take that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And this is a group that has just started out, but absolutely the Advantage Kansas Coordinating Council, from its creation, we worked with them as the governor made those appointments to make sure that we are aligned with those efforts and the framework for growth and with the Board of Regents and their new strategic plan. And so that the framework for growth is front and center in every discussion that we have at Advantage Kansas Coordinating meetings. And so definitely driving towards that. Our big effort in the different committees is saying, okay, let's take stock of what we're doing. Here's an audit of all of our training programs that we're doing in the state of Kansas right now. And how can we reposition those dollars to get behind the initiatives of the framework for growth as far as preparing talent? And so very much alignment.
Fair enough. On the salary question, don't forget utilizing the SHRM chapter, Society of Human Resources chapters. Just another point from Jack, it looks like.
Yep.
Again, if you've got a question for Lieutenant Governor Toland or Trent Armbrust, please put it into the chat box and we will communicate it thusly. Let me ask you this question. When you look at what you guys have developed with respect to this framework for growth, and then you compare us with where we are with our competitive states, how do we stack up in terms of this sort of effort?
Do you mean about the plan itself? How does our plan compare to other states' plans? Actually,
both questions. How does our plan compare to other strategies putting forth by other states trying to do the same thing? And a broader overarching question is, how do we stack up with other states with respect to movement on these critical issues?
Well, let me take the second question first. So Site Selection Magazine named Kansas its most improved state for economic development from 2019 to 2020. So most improved in the nation. We also went from number 21 on economic development projects successes per capita in 2019 to number 10 in the country. We broke the top 10 for the first time in I don't know how long. So that shows not just that we're crowing about things that are going well here, but that nationally people are paying attention. So I think that's a reflection of the fact that there is so much urgency to get better and to get better now. We kind of lost a decade here as it relates to economic development in the state, and we got to make up for lost time. And so I think our plan based on, and Trent's more of an expert on other states' plans, but I'd put ours up against any of our peers. I think we've, we engaged national experts in doing the data deep dive and in fashioning the plan itself. And I think ours is as visionary as any state's plan that I've seen. But Trent, you really are the subject matter expert here.
Yeah. I think what excites me about our plan is not only is it visionary, but it also has the flexibility, because we can't foresee everything that's going to emerge in the next 5 years. And so, or even in the next year. And so the flexibility to be able to develop some strengths in verticals and hang those on the framework is really exciting to me. And I think what really made me feel good the other day was the EDA published their new priorities for the nation. And if you look at those investment priorities and the framework for growth, they are completely aligned. And so that helped, that really shows that we had a plan that started 18 months ago that got implemented, that was published this year, that's going to allow us to continue to move this state forward and develop those critical pieces as we learn more and we develop more, and with our partners at the federal, state, and local level.
We've got just about 10 minutes left in our session. So again, those of you who are joining us, if you have a question for Lieutenant Governor Toland or Trent Armbrust, please include it in the chat and we will get to it. Here's a very specific question, guys. Where do we find more information about the rural broadband build out? The comment is that's not only good for industry, but also clearly good for education. And that was proven true during the pandemic.
I am so excited about what's happening with broadband in the state. We did 10 years worth of broadband infrastructure work in about 6 months last year, thanks to the CARES Act and Governor Kelly and the legislature agreeing to invest $50 million in fiber, in hotspots, in last mile connections that are so important to getting Kansans connected. You can go to kansascommerce.gov/broadband to learn more about that. What's most exciting to me is that I think we've only just scratched the surface in terms of what's possible around broadband. So, there are maps that show with some degree of accuracy, varying degrees of accuracy, areas that are served and unserved in the state. And it is our goal to get rid of all of the unserved areas in our state and get to speeds of 100 and 100. And if the money flows the way we hope it will from Washington, D.C., we are equipped to be able to do that. And that would be a game changer for business. That would be a game changer for education, for our healthcare system, and just for overall quality of life. And I might mention, I wish I knew what the subdivision was, but got an email out of the blue from somebody who is I believe she was like a doctoral student who lives somewhere right around Manhattan in a rural area that did not have good broadband access. And she emailed and said, please approve the grant request that's coming from so-and-so so that you can fix the problem in our neighborhood. And this is a problem to me because I'm trying to finish my doctorate and then I want to do such and such, and I want to be able to do that from home, and I cannot do it from my home, and we will leave the state. And there are plenty of people that are in that boat, and I'm really pleased that we fixed that problem last year. We got that area served, and I got a note from that person saying, "Hey, thanks." And so it's so important to get broadband to all residents and businesses in this state. Just like a century, 120 years ago, 125 years ago, it was about getting running water to homes and businesses. This, broadband is as important as running water when we think about the future. And so we've made a lot of progress. We got a long ways to go, but there's good reasons for optimism.
One of the arguments we use in this building, and I'm in Kansas Farm Bureau, is the comparison to rural electrification in the early 20th century. It's a remarkably similar sort of concept. Let's change gears. Do you foresee any of the ARRA stimulus funds available for communities in developing or acquiring real estate or building spec buildings and making these areas sites ready for commerce?
Well, the short answer is I don't know. The plan and intent of Governor Kelly and this administration was that we have an open, transparent process, very similar to the Spark process that we used last year to get CARES Act dollars invested in local communities. And the legislature put a proviso in the budget which cut the governor and the administration entirely out of the administration of those dollars. And so the governor vetoed that proviso, and then last night the legislature overrode that veto. So we don't know what's going to happen with the $1.6 billion that's coming to the state, or any of the other dollars that will flow from the American Rescue Plan. So I'm sorry. I can tell you we had some very, very exciting plans at the Department of Commerce for doing just the kind of things you're talking about, getting us set up so that we can be more competitive in the race for new capital investment in the state. And those plans are on hold until there's clarity around the federal dollars.
We have a question about tax policy, and the timing is fortuitous. This chamber's Business Advocacy Committee this morning met, and we had a deep and meaningful conversation about future taxation in Kansas, right? And it's the kind of thing that I'm confident you guys are having the conversation about at the executive branch level with respect to how does a future state government tax policy line up with a future state government economic development policy. So can you give us a little insight into how those conversations are shaping up, and what, if anything, you're thinking about, and what possible potential changes we might see down the line with respect to ideas emanating from the executive branch?
Well, I can tell you about, sort of the policy issues that we've wrestled with in the last 13, 14 months on this. So when COVID hit, you had companies that sent their workers home, and particularly in the border regions of our state. Let's take Kansas City as an example. You've got a lot of folks that worked in Kansas and live in Missouri and vice versa. And so it gets really complicated on issues like PEAK, which is one of our key incentives, which is a rebate of withholding tax that's paid. If that worker is no longer in Kansas and they're working from Missouri, how do we handle that? And from a tax policy perspective, we've got to make sure that workers are not paying taxes in both states, and that to some degree depends on reciprocity between the states. So you do receive, in the case of Missouri, you receive a credit on your taxes if from one state to the other, if you're in that work in Kansas, live in Missouri, or live in Kansas, work in Missouri situation. So you're not, so it's a wash in terms of the taxes paid. It's kind of a hassle, but it is a wash. But I think what we're going to find is companies more and more are going to come to us and say, we want to bring, we're going to hire 500 people, but only 200 of them will be in Manhattan, and the rest are going to be around the country and around the world, perhaps. So there are some thorny questions for economic developers around how do we evaluate the economic impact of this opportunity? Is it, do we only incent the 200 jobs? Do we give some consideration to the fact that a portion of these jobs, which are elsewhere, will be required to come to headquarters that's, let's say, in Manhattan, Kansas? And so, 4 times a year, employees are spending a week staying in a hotel and spending money in restaurants and bars and yada, yada, yada. So we don't have that settled, but these are what we're wrestling with right now. And I would anticipate that as 2021 winds down, we get to, planning for the next legislative session, that you will see proposals coming out of the administration related to these issues.
Guys, we're bumping up against our 1 o'clock, and we, if anything, we'll be cognizant of our time boundaries. So let me wrap it up by saying, Trent, we're delighted to have you back with us, and nice to see your friendly face again. And Lieutenant Governor Toland, it's always a pleasure to have someone of your stature joining the Manhattan Chamber of Commerce. We're grateful for your ability to work with us to offer this presentation. And again, this is Public Service Recognition Week, right? So at some point, each of you guys had a choice to make with respect to making a job and a career out of public service, and you said yes. So on behalf of all of us at the Manhattan Chamber, thank you for doing that. And thanks for being with us again today. And now I'll turn it back over to Jason.
All right, thanks, Mike. And I'll echo his comments about thanking Lieutenant Governor Toland and welcoming Trent home. So we appreciate you all being with us today. I do have a couple of things before we break. First of all, I want to recognize again our featured sponsor, Olson, and Mark and his team, which have always been great supporters of the community. Just a couple events coming up that you should be aware of. We will be having our first live business after hours this month, and it is May 12th at the Manhattan Country Club. So it's the first one we've had since obviously since last spring. So we're excited about that. Good Morning Manhattan is on May 20th. And then mark your calendars for the Leaders Retreat, which we postponed from last January. It will be July 29th and 30th, and it will be at the Manhattan Conference Center. So check our website, manhattan.org, if you want to learn more about that, those programs or any other upcoming programs. So again, thank you all for attending today. Thanks to our speakers. Mike, thanks for emceeing today's event, and thanks to Olson, and we'll see everybody next week.